I think we're live.
Yay!
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
So just trying to set up the chat to make sure that if you have any questions, we can answer them. Trying to be able to look. Yep. All right, we can see y'all. So we're excited to be here, first of all. I'm sure people will join us as we go along, or you'll maybe watching it after the fact. Well, we're really excited because there are several questions and things like that that people were asking, and we really want to get to them. And we appreciate you sharing feedback and information of things that would help you become successful in your coaching career. But before we do that, I just want to take a minute to welcome our sponsor and say thank you. And our first sponsor is Smiley Face. Reminding you to keep smiling, even if you have to fake it. Because just remember, when you smile, even if you're faking it, your brain doesn't recognize the difference. So it's actually creating the chemicals that are going to make you happy. So in challenging times, you can fake it, you can smile, get that energy going in there to really help you boost, because again, happiness boosts creativity, happiness boosts problem solving, the way that you see life, it changes aspect in general. So thank you for Smiley for doing that. And we also have a second co-sponsor, and this is Dory. And Dory's here to remind us that sometimes life has challenges, but you just got to keep swimming. If you haven't seen the movie, you know, she always sings, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. So what we suggest is to take one step at a time in life and just keep taking the next one and the next one and the next one. If you're willing to do that, you're going to create the success in the life that you want. Just keep taking that next step. So I guess we can get started. I don't know if you want to say anything before we get started.
No, just that we are very grateful for the people who were willing to share their thoughts about their struggles with coaching and the most important questions that were on their minds, so that we could know better how to meet your needs and serve you. And we're all in this together, and it's a learning experience for everybody. So we're very excited to have this wonderful technology to be able to help clear up some mysteries and give you guys some ideas.
So as we just started, somebody did ask a question prior to getting started. Let me just bring it up real quick. You want to read the question?
It looks like a two-part question.
No, just saying.
Okay. So we can work together, but I would love to hear how you guys do it or recommend to do it to get more coaches to work with me. Thanks a lot. P.S. I'm taking the Enlightened Relationship course. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for joining the course.
Yep. And part of it says, I love some tips regarding pitching my services to do a free discovery call. And when it's finished, I tell them we can work together and things like that. So it's basically pitching the first session that you might have so that people can kind of transition from maybe a free session to a paid session. And we're actually developing something for you, which is going to give you more of a step-by-step process, because it's something bigger than what we can get to in 10 minutes that we're doing here. But I will tell you that one of the main reasons that most coaches fail to transition people from, let's say, a coaching call or whatever maybe that's for free into a paying client, or even if you do several of them and then transition to a program or paying client, is that they wait to the end. So they get through all this process and they wait to the end and then they pitch. And the only way that you can actually be successful is that throughout the process, so if you're working with them for that hour, half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever you're doing, is that you're actually seeding through the process. And what I mean with seeding is that you're helping share information that's going to be showing them how you're going to be able to work together to truly achieve the results that they want to get. So they have to be getting excited about working with you through this process, so that when you actually get to the end, you're not looking at the end and saying, oh, I would like to work with you, or we can work together, or something like that. It's almost like it's almost understood where they're excited asking to work with you. Because again, your excitement is what's going to sell them, and their excitement of understanding what you're going to be able to provide is what's going to help them then transition. You got to keep in mind that it's an emotional level decision. So it's not a intellectual decision, it's an emotional decision of how they feel that working with you is going to transform their lives.
Well, and actually I would have to add in there that probably even more of the time, it's just the fact that people don't actually make the pitch. They don't offer their services. There's a lot of people that we've met and worked with that actually feel guilty charging or asking, and it feels uncomfortable. So really it comes down to what he said. It's that you need to be designing your presentation instead of just a little sales pitch. The whole thing needs to be designed so that when you get to that point, both you and your potential client are comfortable with the fact that you're going to be letting them know. And it's actually a very similar process to what, if anybody's taken any of our courses that teach you how to sell a program or a product through speaking, it's a very similar process. So again, we're actively working on creating a program that will teach you exactly what to do so that you know that you're, on one hand, giving value during the session, and then also going to be able to let them know how you can help them take it further in a way that you feel comfortable, because we understand it sucks. we know it doesn't have to suck though, and that's really what the whole point of the program we're creating. So we're glad that you asked, and actually a lot of other people had asked similar questions before. So
like you said, in the helping fear, we kind of fear selling because we think, you know, we have this negative connotation. But again, if you're excited about it, if they're excited about it, you're providing value. At the end, you're not actually selling. You're just kind of transitioning to what the reality is going to be of how you're going to help them through that process. All right, so let's get to the next question. Karen had asked, kind of basically, they know what they want to do and the benefits of it and what they offer, but they suffer from chronic pain, and they're also a caretaker. And it was interesting because when they asked, I know Natalie had kind of probed a little bit more, what's your fear? And what's awesome is that she was able to quickly assess and say what one of the fears is, which is the fear that if they were successful, they might not be able to keep up with it. And I found that very powerful that she quickly responded with that, because that is a big fear. And actually that's a fear that we had when we first started. You know, we're doing several different things, and do we really want to add something else to our plate? How would we manage this if we're trying to do all these things and then add something else that we have to do? So it is a rational fear for the most part, but there's ways that you can get around that to be able to be effective.
Yeah, and I mean, I really struggled with this, especially, you know, when we both, it's like we already felt like we were working more than full time. So to add anything new was overwhelming. So it was always a matter of having to prepare in advance for growth. So it's like saying, okay, well, if this is successful and I have 5 new clients a week and it's going to take me 7 or 8 hours a week or whatever the case may be, when would I have to fit that in? How could I rearrange my schedule? Is there somebody that I could hire for a few hours a week to help me take care of some of the back end? Or even, is there somebody you could hire to take care of some of the stuff in your personal life that would allow you more time to dedicate to the things that you want? So it really comes down to the fact that there's always a way to accommodate it, and that really it's not actually having to do the work that's the problem. It's the anxiety about, how am I going to handle this? So you can solve both problems by planning for success in advance, so that you know exactly what to do when it happens. So you're not just all of a sudden being overwhelmed with a lot more work than you can handle, because you already knew what you would do when you got to that point.
Yeah, and it actually also helps because it gets you excited to get to that point. Because once you can start seeing, okay, so what if I grow in this opportunity? For example, we started seeing, if we do this and we grow, then we can provide an opportunity for somebody that's going to work with us and start taking this part of our business away from what we're doing. Or we can be able to see how we might be able to pay someone to do some of the other things in our lives that really we don't want to be doing anyways. So it's really being able to do that and develop a strategy so that when you do get there, and you will get there once you have that foundation understanding of what you would do when you get there, then you're excited about it, you're excited about creating it. And then once you create it, you can just jump on it. And then you can start saying, okay, so now that I'm going to want to grow bigger and I want to do other things, now what can I do to get ready for that next stage? So,
and really, it is a great thing that she was willing to be honest, because a lot of people fear success more than failure. And really, if you can prepare yourself mentally and have a plan ahead of time, it removes that fear, and then you can stop blocking yourself from the growth, and you will be able to handle it. And also the good news is it doesn't happen all at once.
Yep.
You know, even rapid growth isn't that rapid. And you always have a little bit of buffer time to plan for the next level. So.
And so I just want to say also, if you have any other questions, you can write them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. We're just getting to the first questions, some of the ones that were on Facebook and things like that. So the next one is from Emily. What kind of certifications are necessary to legally work as a coach? And this is a question that we actually get asked a lot because there's a misunderstanding, a misperception of coaching. First of all, there is no governing board or accrediting board in the field of life coaching. Most people assume that it's like counseling. For example, I have a background in counseling, and if I want to be a therapist or a licensed counselor or practicing and things like that, there are certain requirements and legalities that I have to adhere to. But because coaching doesn't have a governing board or regulating board, then really there isn't that legality that would be in coaching, similar to counseling and things like that. And the reason that there's a misconception, part of it, is that there's a lot of companies out there that say, you know, oh, I'm accredited, or I'm a governing board, or whatever it is. They use certain terminologies to make people think that they are this institution or that they partner with this institution. And really it's just marketing. And it's a sad thing to see because it sometimes deters people from really following through with coaching out of fear that they have to go through this process where there is no process. But I'm not saying not to actually have a foundation, because really what's going to make you successful as a coach is for you to have the tools that you need of how to actually help people and how to have the things in place. Obviously, there's other things such as insurance and other things that you can look at. But again, that's up to you and what kind of insurance you want to get for liability. So.
Yeah, and really it's a good thing and a bad thing that there really, at least in the United States, we can't speak for all countries, but in the United States, there are no legal requirements as a coach. So it's a good thing because it means that there are no big hurdles that you have to jump before you can start coaching. You can call yourself a coach. You can start coaching right away. And that's a great thing because you can learn as you go, and you get to choose what type of certification you get or what type of training you get. And the bad part is that there are people out there that are coaches that shouldn't be. And so it does allow them to do that and, you know, be able to do a disservice to the people that are their clients because of the fact that there's nobody regulating it. But we always want to be upfront with people the way that it works, again, because we don't want to ever give people the wrong impression that for some reason, you know, what we offer is required by law, because that's not how it works. But it is required to get some form of training to make sure that you know what you're doing and that you're understanding how coaching works, and specifically understanding how it's different than therapy, because you by no means can do therapy as a coach. It's completely different. Just a really short explanation is therapy is usually either dealing with mental health or you're looking more in the past and you're dealing with emotional issues, whereas coaching is very future oriented, it's goal oriented, and you're not dealing with mental health issues. So that's the differentiation, and that's also why coaching is not regulated in the same way that therapy is, because you're not supposed to be going down that path that therapists go down.
And I would just add that you can get yourself in legal problems if somebody comes up to you that you're working with and might tell you that they're going to harm themselves or harm another person, and you don't do anything about that. So always keep that in mind, not only thinking about from the legality side, but just the ethical side of what you're doing to serve your client. Because really, what you're doing is trying to protect your client and look at for their best interest and the people around them. So if somebody ever threatens or even implies that they might commit suicide or something like that, it's something that you have to take very serious. So. And
we do talk about that in our, like we have a foundational coaching course, Life Coaching, a Complete Guide. And we do have like coaching code of ethics in there that are pretty much standard across the industry. If you look at a lot of other coach training companies, we're all following a model that's modeled after actually what therapists use and the American Psychological Association, just adjusted to what coaches actually do. And so we definitely, if you have never looked at that, I would definitely recommend checking it out. There was actually another similar question by Tana that she was pointing out that there are a lot of different types of certifications, and she was wondering if there are different legal requirements, and she specifically mentioned like coach versus health coach. And so that's actually a really great example. And it's kind of a similar answer to the idea of when you're thinking about therapy versus coaching, is that a health coach is still just a life coach. There are no regulations. There's nobody who, has the authority to tell you you are or are not qualified to be a health coach. You can call yourself that, but the difference between a regular coach and a health coach isn't so much a legal distinction, it's more of an ethical one, in the fact that you're dealing with somebody's health. So you have to be extremely careful. So it's one thing if you're a coach that works with somebody on weight loss, or you're a coach that helps people get physically fit, or even helps people work on the diet. Those are all fine things to do, but you have to be mindful of whether or not they have medical conditions. And even though there's no law telling you this is what you have to do, what you really need to be doing is making sure that you know exactly what the person you're working with's health condition is before you do anything. Because if you're going to do anything that goes against what their doctor might want them to do, that technically you could be liable for that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because you do have to be mindful of that. Just like if you happened to have a client that did have some form of mental illness, it would be good to know. Doesn't mean you can't work with them. Obviously, you can't do therapy, but you need to be aware. Just like Joel said, if you have somebody that is suicidal, there are certain things that you, at an ethical level, are required to do. And so it's just being mindful of how your coaching is going to impact this person and what their needs are, especially if it is something having to do with health. So, basic answer is no, it's exactly the same, but it does differ depending on how it would impact the person that you're working with.
Yeah, another thing I just want to add real quick to that is that it's almost like us giving you legal advice. We're not telling you to do certain things or not to do certain things, because at the end of the day, if you feel concerned about something, you should talk to a lawyer that specializes in what you're looking at, especially in the health field or any other field such as that, just like accounting. If you want to talk to an accounting person to see about taxes and blah, blah, blah. So the same thing comes for you when dealing with somebody that has health issues, that you want to make sure that you're not telling them, well, don't listen to your doctor and listen to me, unless you're able to and in a position or knowledgeable enough to be able to make those decisions, because obviously you don't want to harm someone long-term without making sure that you're actually helping them. And at the end of the day, remind them that what you're doing is that you're just providing information. You're there to provide information, not give, specific treatment advice or legal advice or whatever it may be. So let's go to the next question, which is from Sparkles. I'm interested in providing live videos or doing online classes. I'm told to do a weekly video, but presently do not have the time. Until next year, I am swamped. So when we feel swamped, we usually assess. And actually, no, not at this point. Before, we used to feel swamped all the time. And one of the things that we always would do is that we would assess what really was necessary. And we changed a lot of our structure when I ended up getting sick. And at that point, we were always swamped for the most part. We're running multiple businesses at the same time and things like that. And when I got sick, we kind of realized that I was bedridden. She was basically taking care of me. So there was a lot of things that we couldn't do, but then we started realizing there was a lot of things that we didn't have to do. So at this point, we have developed a lot of balance in our lives because, we've kind of learned from that, and we don't want to ever get back to that. With that said, as many times we create busy work that's not actually producing anything. I'll give you a quick example. A long time ago, I thought it was good to start posting on Facebook every day, like pictures and quotes. But was that really getting me to where I want to get to? What I wanted to do with help with people and stuff like that. You might say, well, it's a small thing, but there was a lot of different small things that I was doing that weren't really reaching the people the way I wanted to reach them. It wasn't really meeting my goals and the outcomes that I want to get to and things like that. So with that said, with doing weekly videos, it's really up to you if you think it's going to help you get from point A to point B. And the second part is recognizing that it doesn't have to be like an hour, 2-hour videos per week. Maybe even if you did 10 minutes, it might be that you're driving in the car and you get all excited about something that's you're listening to, or you got a spark of insight, or you're working on writing something and you say, hey, I want to do a video on that. You can do a video, whether it's live, whether it's not live, and then put the content out there to help other people. And it happens to us a lot where we're just get excited about something or get some insight. We're walking, our creativity juices are going, and we want to contribute. And that's something that we might be able to do. And at the same time, then if you say, well, 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes a week, we can all find 10 minutes a week. And if we can't, then we have to assess, maybe there's fear in there of actually doing it. Again, is that might be fear of, what if I start this and then, I get too busy, do I have to maintain it? Or maybe it's the fear of having to be in front of the camera. There might be other fears, so it's important then to reflect, what are some of the limiting beliefs that I might have around this that might stop me from being able to do this?
Well, I love her example because, she's being very specific, like these weekly videos. But what I find funny is that she doesn't say who told her that she has to do that. So again, really is this what's going to get me to where I need to go? If so, then it really comes down to, you have to plan it in. And so it doesn't matter what it is for you, whatever that thing is, whether it's 10 minutes a week, an hour a week, 4 hours a week, that if this is something important to you, the only way you're going to do it is if you make it a routine. And the only way to make it a routine is if you put it into your schedule in a really, really concrete way. And if you have a really busy schedule, you're going to have to swap something out. And that it's a process of sitting down and being honest. And actually, we mentioned earlier, if there's some way you could hire someone to take something off your plate, if it would be a better use of your time to do something else, then that might be an option. Like, there's so many different ways we could do a whole video just on this topic, as how to squeak out more from a normal day. But really, the unfortunate truth is that we make time for what's important to us. And so if there's something that we're not making time for, it's either that it's not viewed as valuable, or it could just be that we have a lot of bad habits of things that we're doing that are wasting our time, and that we need to be honest with ourselves. Or like you said, it could be fear. So it's one of those things. And if you have something that you want to be adding in to your schedule that's important to you, then take a few minutes and sit down and be honest with yourself. Is it a fear? Is it that I have things that I'm doing that are wasting my time? Or is there something that I could legitimately swap out and make this time for this that I just haven't thought of before?
Yeah. And the only thing I would add also is that we know many people that are very successful, have multiple six-figure companies within the coaching realm, and really have limited social presence. So it really depends on how you're running your business and what you feel comfortable with and what you want to do. Because there isn't a one-size-fits-all, and just always keep that in mind. And I also want to give a shout out to Lonnie. You're awesome too. Just want to let you know that. So,
We love Lonnie.
Yeah. So you want to get to the next question? Which one?
All right. Yes.
There it goes.
Okay. So this is from Greg. He is talking about that he is getting to the point where he wants to sell his programs in course format. And actually, that is exciting. And we're excited for him because we know who he is, and we know that he has a lot to offer. And that really, what it comes down to, we get this question a lot because obviously we've created a lot of courses. We've created 40 courses or so at this point. And that, especially in the beginning, it really came down to taking it one bite at a time. You're not going to eat your whole meal at once. And it can seem really overwhelming or daunting when you think about everything that would go into creating a product like that, like an online course, or, especially if you haven't even written down what you'd be teaching. That would obviously be the place to start. But really, it's a step-by-step process, and don't let yourself stop just because you know that there's a lot of pieces. Write out step-by-step what's going to have to happen and start with the first thing. It's really like any new program, any new thing you're going to add into your business. It's really the same process. And when it comes to making time to record your videos, it's exactly the same answer that we would have said for Sparkles who wanted to do these videos, is that you can do it one a week for 10-minute video if you need to. It really can fit around your own schedule. And what's most important is to make a plan and then get started.
And for example, when I was sick after, bedridden, I started getting better. I would only have the energy to really do it sometimes for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then I would have to go in fetal position for the rest of the day. But I was committed to that process, and I saw this as something that I wanted to do. And even before that, I was busy. We were busy at times when we first started doing courses and producing certain things, but we would dedicate, let's say, an hour a week or something like that. So, or taking one day out of the weekend and say, we're really going to focus on creating this. And even now, we do the same thing. We still are able to really focus on some of those things and just find the times to really chip away at it, because it's the small steps that are really going to get you to where you want to get to. And actually, we're going to steer away real quick from the older questions, and Lonnie had a question. And the question is, how deep should I get into, or we should get into our stories, and really wanting to be authentic and vulnerable, but just having that fear of being able to really share too much and open too much. And what I would say about that is that when you're coaching, especially if you're niche coaching, you are your story in part. Your story connects you to your client. When you share your story with them, it's when they're like, oh, they understand me. They really know what I'm going through because they've been through it. They might have had the same challenges. And really, it's about being able to share your story and using it to provide hope. So in other words, you don't want to be sharing part of your story and saying if it's something that you're still struggling with, if it's something that you haven't been able to use and share with them in a way that's going to provide tools for them to see that they can get through it. Because, and I've had this happen where we've partnered with other people and we've done workshops and conferences, and that person might start talking about relationships and trying to give people idea about relationship, and the person actually started talking about their ex in the conference and started crying and still talking about how they're still hurt in that process. So it wasn't really serving the clients that were out there. It wasn't really motivational, and people were like, felt worse afterwards. So
you can feel the energy in the group.
Just drop. So that's not what you want to provide. Obviously you want to be able to give your story in a way that's going to help people understand that you understand them and that you can help them, and that since you've been through that process, you might know a process that's going to help them deal with that situation to get to where they want to get to.
And what I would say is that we love stories. We tell our personal stories. If you've taken any of our courses, we get pretty personal. And I've been pushing myself to do it more and more. But the whole point of it is that, one, really, it's only applicable if you are coaching in a way that's related to your story. So you don't want to go talk about a bunch of like childhood trauma if it's completely unrelated to what you're coaching on. And then really the way you would tell your story is focus on your aha moments. Focus on those realizations you had, usually after the fact, that gave your pain a purpose. Like, what solutions came from it? How did you find meaning and purpose in these experiences of your life? What was the outcome that came from it? How can you see the good that came from these bad experiences? And so you have to make sure that it's almost like you want to help them walk through the process you went through. Like, I had this happen to me, and then I realized this, and this was an aha moment, and I made this change, and this change led to that. So you want to be bringing them through it and helping them see how this curse turned into a blessing. And the reason why you share that is because then it can help them see that their curse can be a blessing, that their pain can have a purpose. And so you're planting that seed. Now, this is a very important part of this, is yes, please share your story. But under almost all situations, you are not to share your story in a one-on-one coaching session. It's okay, like, as an introduction, but that the coaching session is not about you. So it's almost like you want to use your story and opening up to them to form the beginning of the relationship, but that as you continue on your sessions, you're not just getting together and sharing more of your story every time. And so you do have to be careful on that.
Yeah, and really what it comes down to is when you're doing it on one-on-one, is to, like she's saying, is that you can share parts of your story, but you don't want to be sharing your story every session. You don't want to prolong or continue that process. So there might be aspects of it that you might share in specific situations that, again, helps people feel understood, helps people see that there's hope, and that there's tools out there that are going to help them. but just aspects of that story and not having to share your story.
Right. It's like as an example.
Yeah.
So it's like, or letting them know you can relate to them. I can relate to them because I had X or Y happen, but again, you're not going to go on for 10 or 15 minutes telling them your story. It's just for illustration purposes, where you can do a whole elaborate telling your whole story, but it could be in a video or some other form of expression or a blog post or something, so that then clients can read it or watch it, get to know you better, and have a reference for how they can connect to you in your coaching sessions.
And we're going to move on to the next question, which is really about not letting challenges that they're facing personally stop them from guiding others through their transition. And how can they let go of the ridiculous restraints of thinking that my life has to be perfectly in order? And there was a second question to that by someone else that says, I have been told by many people because I'm overweight, people won't listen to my advice. So the one thing that I posted right away on Facebook when this came up was that we know people that have $1 million coaching business that are obese, you know, and she does very well, and she's very sassy. She curses like a sailor, but she is who she is, and her people love her.
Love her.
Love her. So
she's like a rock star.
Yeah. But the reason is that she embraces who she is. And really, part of it is that we can't stop progressing and waiting for life to be perfect, because life will never be perfect. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be obstacles. And in fact, if you're not having challenges and obstacles in your life, then you're probably not growing. If I start getting too comfortable, then I know I'm becoming complacent. So it's not that I look for problems or I look for a necessary challenge, but I want to be challenged. You know, I want to grow. I want to develop. I want to push myself to make sure that I'm fulfilling my potential and things like that. But there are obviously other challenges that might come up, whether it's in our relationship, whether it's financial challenges or other challenges that might make us feel like maybe we're not adequate to help other people. But realistically, one, your coaching client doesn't have to know your personal problems. And second, it's only applicable if that's a niche of your coaching and you're trying to help people be coached in that niche and it actually pertains to something. So if you are overweight, for example, it might be a little challenging to have the credibility to coach people on how to lose weight and how to maintain that weight off. Because they might say, well, if you can't do it, then how are you going to teach me how to do it? Or you might not be able to coach someone how to get buffed, because they might see somebody who's actually done it and see that as more credibility. Or you can't coach somebody on how to be a millionaire
if you're broke.
If you're broke. You know, it sounds kind of silly, but that's kind of the reality of it. You know, in certain niche coachings, you have to be able to show the results in your own life. But in general, as coaching principles, it does not have to be that. And
yeah, and really, even more than that, like, if you're a coach and you know that your process helps people and you can help people transform their life, even if your life is falling apart around you, it doesn't mean that your process doesn't work. Now, it is actually very common that people don't take their own advice. And so, like, even my former career was as a graphic designer, but yet my website was always the last one to get redone. So it's okay, it's normal, and they don't know. And it's really not about the fact that they would know, it's about you feeling authentic.
Yeah.
You not feeling like a fraud. So we totally understand where the feeling is coming from. And there are some practical things that you can do. One is remind yourself that what you're offering is valuable to them, and just because your life is falling apart doesn't mean theirs has to. So at least keep going. You don't want to take yourself out of the pool of options for someone just because you're having a rough patch in your life. And then secondly, you can see when you're doing your coaching that the people that you're coaching are like mirrors for you. And so you get just as much out of coaching them as they do, because while you're doing it, you're reiterating to yourself everything that you're coaching them on. And so you might be, questioning them or listening to them or giving them a tool that's exactly what you need to be hearing in the moment.
Yeah.
And so the best thing that you can do is keep going, because not only will it feed you, but it'll give you an opportunity to reflect on yourself so that then you can take your own advice. And so it is totally understandable to feel that way, but you don't want to hold yourself back just because your life isn't perfect. And I like the analogy of, it would be like saying you're going to go on a cross-country trip and wait for all of the lights to be green for the whole route before you get started, which is obviously absurd, but it's the same thing when you're doing anything in life, especially in a business, is that you can't wait for it to be perfect. You can't wait for your life to be perfect. You just have to go. And then really more than anything, when it comes to coaching people, is that you're not supposed to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And ideally, you're focusing on a very specific thing that you're trying to work with them on. And it's not going to be that thing that you don't have the answers on. And so it's an understandable feeling, but really, you don't have to worry about being perfect. Nobody expects you to be. And they're not going to know unless you tell them.
Yeah. Well, and the other part is that I always tell my clients, for example, and not only clients when I'm doing a workshop, when I'm doing a conference, is that I always share that it really is a collaborative process. And I'm very honest about that I learn just as much as they learn from their experience. I grow just like they grow from their experience. I'm a better person for every client that I coach. And that's what you have to keep in mind, that as you coach people, you're blessing them, but they're blessing you right back. So by saying, well, I can't do it till my life is perfect, then you're actually limiting yourself from growing and from people being able to also plant seeds of change within you. Because again, it is a collaborative process. And the more I coach people, the more I do conferences, the more I do workshops, the more I feel inspired, the more I grow. And really, it empowers you as a coach. When you start seeing people transform, it inspires you to keep going and keep transforming in your own life. So,
well, actually, I just remembered another question that had come up a couple times before, which is very similar, which is like, I'm not the best expert in this niche. So who am I to call myself an expert and teach people anything or coach people about this? And it's exactly the same thing, where you might not be perfect in what you're doing. You might not be the best, but you're going to be better than some of the people who are starting out like where you started out. And so there's always someone who's looking up to where you are now. And so the way that it works is that here I am, I'm not perfect, I'm not the best, but I can reach down and help pull you up to where I'm at. And while I'm doing that, I'm reaching up to someone else that I'm learning from to get myself to that next level. So then I can turn around and help you up to the next level. And so when it comes to being an expert, is that if you've been through something, if you've learned something and come out on the other side with a result, then you are further along the process than someone who hasn't done that. And to them, you are an expert. And that as you continue to grow, then you have more and more and more to offer, and you become an expert to more and more people because you're at a higher level. But so it's important to recognize the value of where you are and what you can offer. So it's important to recognize that you can offer something to someone else, even if your life isn't perfect, and even if you're not an expert, like the most expert that somebody could possibly be in your niche. It doesn't mean that you don't have something that's extremely valuable for that right person who's just at that place where they need what you have to offer.
Yeah. And actually, there's another question that we were going to go on later on, but I'm actually going to kind of jump it in here because I think it's good. And the other question was about, what if you have maybe like people in your life or people that you meet that might question, say, how can you coach other people if your life is not in the right place? Like, who are you to be a coach? It's almost like saying, who are you to follow your dreams? Who are you to thrive? You know, and I think it's important to really reflect on why they might be doing that, and that not everyone is going to believe in what your dreams are. Not everyone is going to believe that you might be able to do something, but you can't let other people dictate that. Part of the reason that people do that is because if you thrive and you actually start helping other people and are successful at it, it makes them question themselves. Why am I not following my dream? Why am I not doing what I have to do to actually be successful? So it's reminding you that, one, you don't have to listen to them because they're not actually, they might be doing it out of their own fears, out of their own insecurities. It might not have nothing to do with you. In fact, a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. And the second part is that they're not your client. The people questioning you, the people trying to bring you down, they're not your client. In fact, we separate some of the people in our lives from some of the professional things that we do altogether, you know, because we understand that they have different values in our lives. And it's okay for you to do that. If you have people that will pump you up, inspire you, make you see your greatness, those are the people that you want most around you. The people that can tell you, I see how you can help people. Because if you're looking to become a life coach, or if you're already a life coach, it's probably because you've always been a life coach anyways. Something that naturally happens where people come to you and they want advice, they want help. So it's really embracing that and saying, and I will continue to grow through this process. And I will negate what other people are saying because it's them, it's not me. But I'm going to continue to plant the seeds of change because that is what you came here to do. So embrace it and do it.
Well, and that's what, it was Adam that asked the question. Thanks, Adam. What it made me think of is that we've said this in a lot of the things we've done, is that behind every successful person is a pack of haters. And the reason why they end up being successful is because basically they ignore the haters and they allow it, instead of to bring them down, to become fuel to make them want to prove the people wrong. And, you know, the example that comes to my mind is in my own life. When I was 23, I decided that I couldn't take living in the great white north in New Hampshire anymore. I was just getting done with a terrible cold winter, and I needed to move where it was warm, and I chose Florida. And what I noticed is that when I would tell people, whether it was friends or family or even strangers at the places that I worked, and I said I was moving to Florida, I was really shocked that like 90%, no joke, of the responses that I received were negative. That they were constantly saying things like, oh my God, it's so hot, you're gonna hate it, there's so many old people, and they're gonna be all driving around and causing traffic, and it's so busy down there, and there aren't any mountains, and you're gonna miss the seasons because they don't have fall, and like on and on and on and on. There was a million different reasons. And there was always negative, and everybody always thought that I was crazy and that I would be back. And then there was this one person that said, you know what? I've always wanted to do that, and I just was never brave enough to make the change. And like that was a big aha moment for me because I was brave enough to make the change. And that's really been a distinguishing factor in my life, is that I didn't let all those people stop me from wanting to go. And actually what I learned from that experience is that sometimes you just need to keep it to yourself. And it sounds unfortunate, but you have to figure out who are those people in your life that you just aren't going to share these things with, because they're going to have a negative opinion. They're going to try to talk you out of your dream. And if those people exist in your life, just don't tell them about it. Find someone else to talk about, even if you have to go online to do it. Is that you got to just block them out, because you know, if I'd listened to those people, or all the other times people around me had negative things to say and tried to discourage me, then I wouldn't be where I am today. And so it's a big lesson, it's a big hurdle to overcome, and we understand that it's hard, especially if it's people close to us. You know, it can be painful, but you just got to do it anyway.
Another thing I would add too is that in counseling, for example, you're not supposed to work with family or friends, like at a therapeutic level. And I actually feel the same way with coaching. You know, I advise friends and family members. I'll give them insight. They ask me questions, some stuff like that. But really at a professional level where I'm coaching them, I tend not to do that, because you got to remember that they have their own biases against you. And also, if you're starting out, for example, your coaching career, and you're just coaching friends and family member, they're not going to produce the results that a stranger that you're coaching is going to produce, or someone else that's not really close to you is going to produce. Why? Because they see you through a different lens. Their level of credibility that they see you, and even now, you know, I might go back to Puerto Rico where I'm from, and I tell my friends what I'm doing, and a lot of them will be like, yeah, they think I'm lying, because they still see me from the lens of who I was when I was younger. So you got to keep that in mind, that those, again, are not your client. And I always think about like Einstein, for example, you know, somebody who left school early, somebody who could literally have been labeled bipolar because he had these manic things that he had an idea and he would work on it for days and then he would crash and stuff like that. That now in our society, they would look at him and say, you know, who is he? Even then, who is he to transform certain fields, or who is he to come up with theories? You know, in our history, we've had many people. A lot of people ask, who is he or who is she? But the only difference is that those people said, I am who I am. I know what I have to give, and I am willing to share it with the world. And a quick commercial break coming up from Dory, our sponsor. Just reminding you to just keep swimming and take that next step. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Who's next? Oh, Mark?
Yep.
Yes, Mark.
Actually.
Oh, Anna or Anna, not sure how she pronounces that. Okay, so she was asking about the legal setup of a web-based enterprise, especially the tax and accounting stuff. And then the second part of her question was about combining alternative therapies and coaching, and if there are any legal ramifications. And I'll remind you what Joelle said before, is that it would not be our place to give you legal advice. I can tell you at the very basic level, as far as a coaching business, that as with any sort of small business, you can do it as a sole proprietor, which means basically you're just you. You don't have to register a business name or legal entity. A sole proprietorship is just a person running their own thing. If you do it with taxes, it's a Schedule C, it's a form, and you have to track your income and expenses. That's the simple answer. Of course, there's many more options, and you should look into what are the requirements in your state, just to be sure.
Or country.
Or country, if you're from another country. You do want to track all your incoming money and outgoing money so that you can have a record of it for your taxes. It's pretty simple, but that there is a little bit more to it as far as web-based or online. You also have to check with your state because there's different rules for that regarding taxation. There are less taxes online, but again, we don't have the specifics for where you are. So you do need to look that up. A lot of times at the local level, the business enterprises, the government will have a lot of the answers for you. So whether you actually ask an attorney or not, you can also ask at your state or local municipality and get more information there.
And I would say that there's a lot of lawyers, you can get people pro bono to give you information. A lot of people do a free session at first, might give you insight. It's a lot of honest lawyers that'll give you some insight. There's other ones that'll give you information.
With a big fee?
With a big fee to tell you this is what you need because they want your money. So always get second advice if need so. Again, there's a lot of them that are willing to give you free advice.
And there is information online. So you don't even necessarily have to hire someone, but you do want to find out how it works in your specific area because it does differ from place to place. But you are perfectly able to just start and keep track of things and establish more official things as you go. And then as far as alternative therapies versus with coaching, it really depends on what alternative therapy you're talking about. And so again, coaching does not have any regulation. However, if you are doing some sort of alternative health therapy that does have regulation, those are the regulations that you need to be following. And so just like with therapy, which requires a license, you cannot say you're doing coaching, but actually be doing therapy. So like, for instance, alternative therapy is like, it's not like you can say I'm a coach, but then be doing, be a chiropractor. Like that would be not only inappropriate, but absurd because either you're a chiropractor or you're not. And so she didn't ask any specific ones, so we can't really answer that, but that coaching, again, you can call yourself a coach, you can add coaching onto anything, just don't go adding other things into coaching without knowing for sure what the requirements are.
And actually, I'm going to rewind real quick because Lonnie made a comment about people wanting us to work a normal job. One thing I love most about coaching or about doing courses or about whatever it is, conferences, workshops, and stuff like that, is showing people that you can live a different life than what most is reality. Because most people will look at our life and it's so outside of what is real. And for us, an 8 to 5 is so outside of what is real. You know, it's like, and it used to be real. It used to be real when we were younger, but it's so outside of our reality. And really, what we would say to anyone is be the example of what you want to live. Like, define that. It wasn't until we really defined what we wanted our life to be like that we were actually able to create it. You know, we wanted to be able to walk on the beach every day. We do that 2 or 3 times a day now. We go swimming almost every day, snorkeling almost every day. You know, and we have the time to really explore and create and give back in many different ways. So it's possible, and that's all I wanted to say. You know, it's always remembering that live authentically you. You know, you have no limitations except the ones that you put on yourself. So with that said, I want to go to Emmanuel. He's from Romania, and he says the median salary is $350 a month. And there are 3 to 4 older coaches that have the monopoly on the coaching market. And the first thing I would say is that when you have people doing coaching, is that you can be very niche and separate yourself from other coaches in the area. The second thing is that if there's only a handful of coaches, they can't be giving, really servicing that many people, first of all. Second of all, is that there's different levels. For example, if you have some top coaches that everyone knows, they're charging buku money. Not everyone can pay that buku money. So then you build yourself up in that, working with people that can afford that only a lower fee or whatever it may be. It's no different than any other company. For example, I started a photography company. I was doing weddings and baseball and different stuff like that. And at first, I was only charging like $300 per wedding while other people were charging $3,000 while I got experience. And then I grew to charge more, and then I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. That's another story. But it's just coming back to that I thought, for example, Anthony Robbins or even Hay House, people in Hay House like Wayne Dyer and stuff like that. I thought these people were like known by everyone in the self-development field. And as I went to conferences, as I went to workshops, and I would talk to them, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I like some of the things that Anthony Robbins is doing, or Wayne Dyer, or people in Hay House, or these people. And some people would be like, who? I don't know who that is. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know who that is? You know, so it's recognizing that what we know in our world doesn't mean that it's what is in reality of everyone's world. The other part is that if your base salary in your country is $350 a month, that's actually exciting. And the reason that it's exciting is because, and I know it sounds weird, but if you think about it from an international perspective, that means that if it's 350 medium salary, then that means that the cost of living is also low compared to the cost of living in many places around the world, right? So that means that you can develop products, you can develop online coaching, and still not charge a ridiculous amount. And you still need less clients than somebody that, let's say, lives in New York or California to really be successful. Because what's happened is that, for example, for us, we have students and clients from all over the world. We have clients from Europe, from Australia. We have clients from Asia. So it's like you have no limitation when it comes to reaching people from all over the world. And that's what's exciting. So if you come from an area that maybe financially, you know, you can't charge what you want to charge, is that you can always expand to reaching people outside of not only your inner circle, not only your country, but to reach people all over the world that have a need for the niche and the things that you can provide.
Yeah, I mean, just at a practical level, thinking about someone who lives in Romania, that if you got 4 clients a month to pay you $100, you're already making more than the average salary. Again, you'd be getting that client someplace outside of your own country. And so it really is a big opportunity. And then, of course, wherever you are from, whether it's a certain state or city or country, you do want to be mindful of where you are and what the income levels are when you are setting your prices for working at a local level. And so a lot of times in our programs, you know, we might be using certain numbers as an example, but always remember that if you're in a different part of the world where money works very differently, that, you know, we're not expecting you to, you know, follow our lead on pricing, because of course you do have to fit it to that. But what he's pointing out is that you're not limited to only working with the people in a specific area. Nobody's limited to that, because we have mediums like this to be able to reach out. And really, there's no reason why anyone would have a monopoly in any area or in any topic, because you can offer a result that is different. It's a matter of differentiating and finding a specific niche, a specific group of people that need something that you specifically can help them with, that those other coaches are probably not going to be able to offer them. So it's just finding a way of offering something different. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Romania or anywhere else, the same thing applies.
And to answer this question real quick, most of our clients are actually now locally. We used to have a lot more of a local base, and we kind of steered away from that to a certain degree as we've developed more in an international business. So yes, you can use Skype. We've used Skype many times. You can even use Google Hangouts and do it privately, where you're just talking to someone privately and things like that. So
you can also just use a phone. It doesn't have to be video.
Yeah.
We've done that too.
So there's many other apps that you can use depending on what your needs are and depending on how you want to be able to communicate with someone. But there's so many resources out there for you to choose from. And like we said, most of our clients are actually not face-to-face. And the reason we also do that is because we like the freedom of being able to travel and being maybe outside of the country and still meet with our clients and people that we work with.
And we have so many international people that we work with that would be impossible to be in person. And actually, just on a side note here, we know a lot of other coaches, and I would say most of their clients, even if they're local, sometimes they'll meet in person, but they'll also meet like over the phone or using Skype or something, even if the person only lives 30 minutes away.
For convenience.
Yeah, just because it's more convenient. And as far as like for a coach, if you think about it, if you don't have an office and you travel to do your coaching, then a 1 hour coaching session is what, maybe 2 hours worth of your time, because you have to travel there and back. Whereas doing it over the phone or Skype, then it's only 1 hour. And so there's a lot of coaches that even with local people, they do the virtual sessions, and it could be a mix. But just know that there are a lot of different ways to do it, and any means that you can communicate with them is fine. Some people even do text, like email coaching. So there are any of those ways are definitely on the table for possibilities.
And mostly when we have, for example, clients where we're doing like a VIP session, meaning that we're working with them maybe for 3 days in a row, then a lot of times we'll either fly out and meet with them, or they might come to our area and stay in our area. We will meet with them and work with them more extensively, and those are for people that we're working more as a VIP, where it's more extensive and it's more like developing a full extent of what they're going to be working on and strategizing for months to come. And then we might meet with them, 3 months later again and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
we have done it virtually, but when we're doing something more in depth, being in person is worth it, especially for a higher end program that we're offering. But everything can be virtual if it needs to be.
And actually, we only have a few more minutes because we're only going to do it to about 8 o'clock. But I want to get to one specific question, which I think it's good, which is how can you be sure that you're meeting your client's expectation if they are unclear? And this is something that is critical for you to be successful as a coach, because you don't want to be wishy-washy. You don't want to be just saying, just let's see what we can get together. You have to be very outcome driven, and you want to be able to measure what the outcome is, and it's got to be something that's attainable. So just because your client might be a little wishy-washy of what they want to create, you should be able to have a general long-term goal that you're working with, and then have specific smaller goals that you kind of build upon as stepping stones to getting there, where you can clearly see if they're achieving it or if they're not achieving it. And again, you want to make sure that these are attainable. And as you work with a client, usually you build upon how complex some of these goals are as you understand their commitment level, as you understand if they're capable of doing some of these things, and they understand and develop the confidence to be able to truly commit to that process. So really, when you know that you're meeting clients' expectations is when you're able to sit down with them and say, okay, we're working on these goals and we've achieved them. It's time to do a happy dance. Let's celebrate this. Give me a high five. You're doing it. You're working in confidence. And they can see that you're actually doing it. So it's not like them looking at it and saying, well, is this working? It's not working. You're actually showing them proof, because as people grow, it's almost like if you're working with a child, you know, a newborn or something like that, that you have a family member, you see them for like a week or 2 weeks, you might not see the growth for 3 weeks or 2 months. But then if you leave and then come back a month or 2 months later, you're like, wow, you know, say, I can't believe how much they've changed, because it didn't happen gradually in front of your eyes. And for the person that you're working with, a lot of this change happens gradually toward bigger goals. So you want to be able to celebrate those stepping stones and be able to point out to them how they're actually achieving those things, so they can actually celebrate and see that you're getting outcomes that they want. So,
well, and even if they're not clear what their goals are, you can still set goals for the coaching itself.
Yeah.
So if you can't help them and they're not able to identify exactly what they're doing, you can still have a goal for what would you like to accomplish by the end of this session? Where do you want to be by the end of this 6-week coaching program? And have them identify what their goals are for the coaching itself, even if they're not clear on the goals that they're trying to reach. And always remember that it's about reaching their goals and the outcomes that they want. It's not about achieving your goals. And so you need to know what theirs are. Like really, if they're unclear what their goals are for the coaching, then you need to pause and get clear on that before you continue coaching. Now, the only exception to this rule would be if you're doing a very structured niche coaching program where you're going kind of step by step, where in that case, you as the coach are taking more of the lead in a lot of cases. But even still, especially with a one-on-one, you always want to be very clear what you're bringing to the table as far as an outcome and a goal. Making sure that they share that same outcome and goal that they want, and always checking in with them, how they're doing, how it's working for them, and how things are coming along, so that you can adjust accordingly. Because even if you have a very structured program, if somebody it's not clicking with them, or they haven't taken that step, then you need to slow down and readjust your strategy accordingly.
Another thing I would also point out is that you want to be able to point out those little things, those little aha moments with your coaching client. Because sometimes they might say a statement that might be like, yeah, just like when we first started talking about the first question, it's a fear of growth. You know, when they said that, you have, you know, when you point out some of those aha moments, or let's say you're working on the purpose course, and you're actually following that structure as a coach, and you have something, you talk about conditioning, you're really exploring somebody's conditioning or something like that, and then they're talking to you and they have an aha moment. You know, part of meeting expectations is also understanding that you have to be willing to be able to share with them on that experience. You have to be able to point that experience out, you know, because sometimes we brush it off, but if we can truly embrace and see that experience for what it's for, that's when true transformation happens. That one aha, and you can have a whole 6 weeks of coaching, but it might be in that 3rd week, that one aha that turns everything around. But it might not happen if they don't recognize it as an aha, unless you see how powerful that really is for them at times. Because they might just be talking really fast and not might have time to process that that is some powerful thing that they just said. It's some powerful thing that they just pointed out.
And you're really there as a coach. Part of what you're there to be is, it's almost like being an objective third party, even though you're really the second party. But it serves the same purpose, is that you're bringing a new perspective, a fresh set of eyes that doesn't already have preconceived notions, and you'll be able to see things within them, and that those shifts that they make that they aren't going to be able to see, and that somebody who knows them better might not be able to see, because they already have too many filters that they're looking at the person through. So it's just like, obviously you're coaching them to get the answers from themselves, but at the same time, it is perfectly okay and also great to be sharing with them your observations. So if you recognize that, wow, you really seem like this is something you're passionate about, especially, for instance, like you mentioned, if you're working with them on their purpose, you might be able to see something they can't. And so you can always make the observation and help them see their own greatness. That's part of what it is to be a coach.
And for example, I've had clients that they're like, maybe during the first session, they just tell me, I don't know what really gets me excited, right? And then during the session, as we're talking, they might start talking about a specific topic, and you see they get all fired up. They start moving their body, and they have a big smile on their face. And then you point it out to them that they're having that reaction to that. For them, it's almost like, yeah, I do get excited about that.
Oh, I see some excitement in there.
So it's kind of in the same level. Even when I work in relationships, for example, I had a client at one point that was telling me about the relationship, about arguing, and he was telling me about the whole argument that he had with his significant other. But as he was telling me, he had this big smile on his face. And I pointed that out to them because I recognized that it wasn't matching with what they said that they wanted to change. And by me pointing it out to them, what happened is that they reflected on it, why they were actually creating unnecessary drama in their life, because they felt more connected with their partner when they argued, but they didn't really recognize it before until it was pointed out how they were getting excited about something that was drama producing in their life. So again, sometimes our body talks more than our minds. So if we pay attention to the person's body language, we can learn a lot about what they actually mean or what they may be able to tell you about their lives and what they want and don't want. So, and at the end of the day, you're going to have some clients at times that they're just, in theory, they want to change, but in reality, they don't. They're just not ready for it. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. No matter how good of a coach you are, you're not going to be able to reach everyone. And if you see somebody is not doing what they need to do time and time again, you can help them come up with different strategies. You can help them come up with steps and things like that. You can help them reflect on maybe what fears they have or why they may be not following through when they say they're going to follow through and things like that. Really help them dig deep and try to understand that. But again, at the end of the day, you can't do it for them. You can't want something more for them than they want for themselves. And then you can't beat yourself up for the simple reason that they're not doing what they need to do to make their life transform or thrive or whatever it is that they want to achieve. So
can't reach them all.
Yep.
But as coaches, we still got to do it anyway. Just like we got to do it anyway, even if there's haters, even if people are trying to hold us back, even if we're not perfect, even if we're not the best expert that exists, and even if some of our clients quit or don't show up for the appointments or don't follow through on their assignments, that all of that cannot possibly be more important than the difference that we make for the clients that are the right clients for us when we get in that flow, and when we're not worrying about, oh, am I going to notice when they have an aha moment, or what am I supposed to say, because we're so in sync with them, we're in rapport, that we just know what to do. And it's just trusting that, just like a conversation with a good friend, it flows, and that once you establish a relationship with the client, then it's just like that. And the people who are ready to change and they come across you, boy, was it the best timing for them.
And again, we can try. Lonnie, you're right. We can try, and we do try to help people see different alternatives, to help people release their fears and be able to help maybe reframe the way they see life, or reframe some of the attitudes that they have of something that they're capable of doing. But I see many coaches that get into the field and then they personalize sometimes when somebody's just not ready, when somebody's not really committed. And we've worked with people that are not truly committed to the process. And sometimes, we're very blunt. We call people out on the fact that they're not actually committing to this process of doing the things that they say they're going to do. And we try our best to help them get to that place and help them see it in themselves. But if we can see that there's nothing we can do, as a coach, I'm willing to step back and say, this coaching relationship is not working. I would love to help you, but I can't, And sometimes just the fact that you're willing to walk away makes people want to actually try even more.
You're right, because a lot of people, they've never had somebody basically stand up to them before. And actually, it's a personal choice. Our personality as coaches is very, like you said, very blunt. very bold, sometimes in your face. Not everybody likes that. Not everybody likes being that way. So there are different tactics. You don't have to be that way by any means, but you do have to be willing to point out when somebody's not following through, and be really willing to ask them and dig deeper as to why is it, because a lot of times there's some sort of underlying fear that's getting in the way. They might say that this or that or the other thing happened in their life, but again, it can be just a distraction that they're using because they're not ready. And as a coach, the most important thing that you can do is ask the right questions to help people to understand themselves, because you're not the one that holds the answers, they are.
Yep.
And you're really not there to give advice. You're there to help them give themselves advice. And so it also takes the pressure off you, because again, you're not there to know everything and to solve their problems. And really, one of my favorite ways to think about it is that as a coach, you are not there to help other people. You are there to support them so that they can help themselves. And so always keep that in mind.
And we've had clients that we've worked with that just weren't ready, and we've cut the process shorter than what was initially anticipated. Because for some coaches, for example, they start developing an identity of, oh, I got to help them. And then they start doing more than, again, the person's willing to do for themselves. But with that in mind, we've had people that we stopped coaching in that process, gave them the tools, and they've come back to us a year later and said, you know something, I wasn't ready at the time, but the tools that you shared with me and the things that you told me planted seeds. And now I've been able to change certain things of my life. And now I am truly ready. But they were able to then really transform their lives in many different ways, just from what was shared in that short period of coaching or whatever it may be. So just because it doesn't work out initially, it doesn't mean that you didn't plant seeds that is going to help someone long term. So always keep that in mind, because you don't know what that seed is going to grow to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, when they have that aha moment and they realize that it's transformed their lives in a way that they could have never imagined. And I know we went over time, but we really, really appreciate the questions, and there's more questions to get to, and we'll do this again. We have several of them, and we are going to be doing a webinar later on, and we'll tell you more about that. But we appreciate you sharing your journey with us. We hope that you enjoyed this. We hope that we're able to answer some of your questions, and that it's going to help you become a better coach, or help you in your business, or help you personally, or whatever it is. Because again, we're all in this together. We're all in this to help other people. We're all in this to plant seeds of change. And as a community, we can do a lot more when we're doing it together. So we want you to grow, generally want that. And we appreciate you sharing your journey and being part of ours.
And if you weren't with us live and you're watching this at any point, you're welcome to leave questions in the comments below. And we're always looking to know more about what other coaches are wanting to learn about, what problems they're having, if there's any challenges, if there's something that they feel would help them with their business. We're always open to hear from you, because again, it really helps us to understand what your needs are. We're constantly creating content, so you might spark an idea, and we'll be able to, create an entire program that addresses it. At the very least, hopefully we'll be able to answer your question in an upcoming video. So please share your thoughts.
And we'll give you more time to be ready next time. I know it was kind of last minute, so we appreciate the people that were able to join us live, and we'll keep you updated. Again, thank you. Wishing you many blessings. Take care.
Take care.